Hello everyone. Today I am going to tell you about control statements. Before we proceed, I am going to give a brief about it. What is control statement? A control statement is a statement which controls the execution of the code based on some decisions. Like if you want to compare two variables and show which one is greater than the others, like you can have a and b variables and you want to show a is greater than b or b is greater than a, then you have to use the control statement. Like other programming languages, PHP has its own control statement, and those are the if else and the if elseif else. So when we have to use the control statement, as I had said it previously, like you have to make some decisions based on the comparison of something. You have to use control statement. In real life example, I can give you something like you have a website and you want the user to be authorized before using login form to show himself his own home page. So if you check if the user is already logged in, then redirect him to his home page, and if the user is not logged in, then redirect him to his login form. So let's jump into the code. Before we jump into the code, let's check what is the general syntax of if and else. This is the general syntax of if else. If is the keyword, then the parenthesis, and within this parenthesis you have to use the condition, then the code block, that is the curly brace, then the else keyword, then the code block. If the condition within this parenthesis is true, then this code block is executed and the else block is skipped. Otherwise, if this condition is not true, else part is executed and this part is skipped. And the general syntax of if else is this: if the condition within this parenthesis is true, this code block is executed, and if this is not true, then this falls back to the else if part, checks this condition. If this is true, executes this code, skips this part and this part. If this condition is not true, then it falls into this part, that is else if, and checks this condition. If this condition is true, then executes this code block and the else part is then skipped. So here is the general syntax. I would like to mention that if you have something to check like a grading system, you have to use else if parts as more as you want, and that is not necessary to use the else part always, so you can easily skip that part. And so let's jump into the code again. So to use the if and else, we can check, like as I have said before, that we have two variables like a is equal to 5 and b is equal to 10, and we want to show our user that which one is greater than the others. So to check that, you have to use if, then the general syntax, that is the condition a greater than b, this code block is executed, a is greater than b, and else so in this example we can see that a is 5 and b is 10, that is false part in this condition, that a is greater than b, which is false for this code. So we will see that the if part is skipped and the else part is executed. So let's check out what is our result. So we can see that the b is greater than a. So if we change the variable's value, then we can check the if part is executed and the else part is skipped. Here is the a is greater than b. So now let's jump into the if and else if part. To do that, we can think an example like we have a variable and we want to check if a variable is greater than 0 or equal to 0 or less than 0. So for this we can have a variable like 15, and as I have shown you before, that if else if and else is general syntax, that is a if, then the condition part. In the condition part, we want to check if a is equal to 0, then uh, the code block will be in curly braces. So here if a is equal to 0, we want to show the user that a is equal to 0. If a is not equal to 0, then we have to check two more things, that is if a is greater than 0 or if a is less than 0. To do that, we can use a less than 0. Then we want to show the user that a is less than 0. If a is not less than 0, then the else part will be executed and this part will not be executed. So here we can show the user that a is greater than 0. And so here if else if, so we can see that here a is greater than 0. So if we want, if we put a minus sign before the variable's value, then we can see a is less than 0. Yeah. Okay, if we put 0 at the variable's value, then we can see a is equal to 0. That is true. So lastly, the nested if else part. What is nested if else part? Like if you have a variable a, let me give you an example that we want to find the greatest value among three variables. Which one is the greatest among those? Is a typo. So a is equal to 1, b is equal to 2, and c is equal to 3. So in our example, it should show that c is greater among those variables. So to check that, we have to use nested if else. So to do that, the syntax is as we have seen before. If a is greater than b, that is a is greater than b. So if a is greater than b, we have to check if a is greater than c. Then we can tell you that a is greater than b and c. So if a is greater than b, we will show you that a is the so if a is not greater than c, then we know that b is less than a, so we can say c is greater than c. So if a is not greater than b, so what will happen? If a is not greater than b, then we have to check b and c. The comparison should be else if b greater than c. So if b greater than c, we can say that echo b is greater than c, or b is the greatest of all the variables. And if b is the greatest of all variables, that is false, then we can easily show that else part echo c is the greatest among all the variables. So let's check what is our result is. C is the greatest of all the variables. So if we change this, and we can see the result is perfect. A is the greatest among all those variables. So here it is. So we have seen all the if, else, if, and nested if else part. So this is the basic control statements in PHP. Thank you.